Morning, everybody. This is the new workbook. So we are going to quickly run through it. It is not as complicated as it used to be. Wendy, unfortunately for us, but good for her, is soon retiring, so we needed to simplify it. We are starting as if you have not put your application budget in. I mentioned that yesterday in the opening webinar that you will have to put your application budget into the workbook, but fear not, it is not nearly as detailed. So we'll start with your grantee name. You'll enter it there, then your grantee number. Your total allocation amount, which is $1,992,282, unless you're San Jose, which you got the few extra dollars this time, and you're $1,992,304. Then you'll put in your allocation amounts at the top, enter allocation amounts, and if you swapped funds, it will go there underneath it. Then you're going to enter in only, except for personnel, that first portion, you're just going to enter in your totals for budget categories. So where you see white, you enter numbers. So for personnel, you'll still break it up into staff wages, core member wages, taxes and benefits, and workers' comp. But for equipment, operating costs, and the rest, we just want the totals. On C14, there is a sorting filter. And then, okay, great. So I'm just going to define these real quick. Hopefully you all can see them. They're a little bit tiny. The money symbol or the dollar sign is line total. T is category total. A is application budgets. B is budget modification. We are no longer tracking adjustments. So when you need to request a budget modification, you click on that box and it will bring up those spaces for you to enter those in. You still need approval for a budget modification. Except for personnel costs, we only want to see category totals. So you will have to track adjustments in your own mechanism. Okay, so back to the sorting is, so E is equipment. O is operating costs, I is indirect, P is personnel, and TOT is total of all totals. Now we're going to go on to the invoice tab. Okay. All invoices are on the same tab. Going down, first indicate if you have an advance or no advance in C2. Right there at the top left. Pick your invoice number in D9. Expenditure dates are on the left, and so is the submission date. Add category totals. Once again, you're only entering white boxes. So if an advance is taken, when invoicing for it, enter the advance amount and put 0 under advance repayment. You can also add more or less than the advance because you're going to be entering the advance amounts yourself. We calculate it for you, but you enter the amounts in based on our calculation, or if you want to pay a little more, you can do that too. That's fine. You just have to make sure you keep an eye on it. Once again, enter only in the white area. Each time you submit a payment request, where it says actual advance repayment and actual withhold amount, you'll have to enter those in. So we calculate both the withhold and the advance repayment. However, it does not automatically calculate into your invoice anymore. You have to stipulate what those amounts are in the white boxes, where it says the actual amounts for both withhold and advance. The balances of your budget are to the right. So There we go. You can see those the whole time, every time you do an invoice. Then we have the 87 attachment as well for grant manager use for each invoice. Once you enter your advance invoice, you will find that the advance amount, box on the right of the payment request boxes, will populate your advance numbers. So first it'll have your advance amount, the amount that you've paid off already, and then that balance, what that is. And that is all I have. See, super simple. What was that? Not even 10 minutes. Does anybody have any questions? Derek, do you want to add anything?
Well, so one question I have is, so cores that took in advance,
Yes.
that's going to be entered on the first tab you were showing us. Is that correct?
Yeah, we're going to put it in here. So you'll put your payment request, your advance payment request in one of these areas, one of the invoice, number 1 or 2 or whatever invoice you're going to do. You put it in as an invoice. Then your repayment is to the right of the invoices. So you have your total. So if you put yes, yeah, you have your total up here, your amounts, and then what that part automatically populates. So it'll take from it because you're going to say yes in that box. And then you're going to put in your amounts for that invoice. And then it's going to populate the total advance amounts up here. And then it'll show what you have spent and what your balance is. And then for each advance, it will calculate what your repayment is, but it won't take it out of the invoice. So you have to actually enter in whatever the calculation is, or another amount if you want to pay more off.
Right. So that all looks good. My only question is, when they're entering their budget on the first tab, I missed it. I think there's a place there for entering advance amounts, or how are those amounts actually entered into the spreadsheet?
So it's just used from that first invoice, or whatever invoice you do.
Oh, I see. So
yes,
jump back to that, please. So on the invoice, so it's like line 25, advance. It says if you are taking an advance, enter amounts here.
Correct.
Got it. And then is that only on invoice 1?
No.
Oh, okay. So they're going to enter that every invoice. No.
When you say yes, that's why there's the yes or no. When you say yes on that invoice, then it will make it populate to the right.
Yes, but the advance amounts that they have to enter,
they enter it in there.
Right.
So if you're taking an advance in the first invoice, this is where you'll enter in those amounts that you're taking. But let's say you're taking an advance on your third invoice, you would put them in here. You have the option to do that. So it doesn't matter which invoice you're entering in the advance, you have that option to put it in where it says, if you are taking an advance, enter the amounts here.
Okay.
And that's the only place you will enter in the advance. And the sheet knows that. So the sheet knows whichever one you put that in, it's going to populate at the top on the right as your total.
That answered my question. Yeah. So you're only entering the advance once as a transaction, and then it'll auto populate after that. So it'll auto calculate how much you're paying back and how much
but you still have to manually enter in your actual advance repayment every time.
Yeah, got that. Cool. Thank you.
Welcome. Any more questions?
Hi, I have a question.
Yeah.
Since we're going with the more general categories, do we need to adjust our general ledger to not show as much detail as we usually
Oh, that's a
do?
great question. No, your general ledger needs to show everything. So we'll be using your general ledger a lot more to replace. Well, we should already have all your stuff in the general ledger, but that will not change. That should be very descriptive, just how I explained in the opening webinar yesterday.
Okay, so you are still tracking all the individual line items. We're just keeping
Correct.
it more general for the invoice. Okay, perfect. Thank you.
Yes, for the budget workbook, but the invoice itself, we still need all the documentation.
I have a question.
Yes.
I think when you were saying the advance, you can use it on invoice 1, 2, or 3. If you scroll down to another invoice, you can enter your advance number in there. Is this pending? Did we get our July invoice processed before the advances? Is that why we would take the option of putting the advance amount in a different invoice other than one?
Some people don't pay off their other advance. Some course, they need more time to pay off the previous advance.
Gotcha.
So that's why. So it just depends on where you are in your spending.
Gotcha. Thank you.
You're welcome. Okay, well, if that's it, and you can feel free to email your grant manager and ask as we go through this, because I'm sure we'll all be learning together. But feel free to ask us if anything comes up or you notice anything or you don't understand or anything like that. We can always troubleshoot and help and train and all that stuff. So, and now Derek is recording this, so we'll have that recording as well.
So Renee, there was a question in the chat that asked, will I use my budget amount submitted during my application in April? And I answered yes, but I wanted to share that with everybody.
Your application budget, you're going to enter that. So it'll be the same, but you're going to transfer it over into this budget workbook.
Yes, so that's from the application is what
Yes.
they were asking. Yeah.
Correct. Which should be pretty easy since it's just the totals now mostly. Okay, well, if that is it, I will go ahead and end this training.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you,
Renee.
everyone.
Thanks for
Thank
coming.
you.
Thank you for taking a
Thank
little
you.
time out of your day, 2 days in a row.
That was quick. Thank you.
Yeah.
Thanks, everybody.
Thank
Thanks.
you.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
Bye. Have a good day.